Okay, listen up, peeps. This is a whistle-stop revision of HTML. Now, we're going to cover HTML today, and you are going to write a very simple web page. And this is because there have been questions in the past to do with HTML. Okay. Now, this revision is extremely important. What I'm saying to you is really, really important, so you need to listen and pay attention. And at some point during this video, you will try and create your own web page using HTML. At the end of this lesson, you will go home and you will do a mind map of HTML with pretty much everything that I've said. So if you want to make some notes as you're going along, that's fine, or you can try and remember it. But I will give you some exam questions on this topic as well. Okay, so let's just recap over the internet. Okay, so the internet is made up of thousands of millions of computers. Now, we connect to the internet at home anyway, generally using broadband. Once we've connected to the internet, we use web browsers to then access web pages. So, let me give you an example. I've got here a choice of Internet Explorer web browser, I've got Firefox web browser, and I've got Google Chrome web browser. I'm going to go on Internet Explorer. So here I'm on a web browser. I'm on the internet. I'm actually on a page which is a web browser, but it's still a web page. And this is a web browser. And I can type into this web browser, which is accessing a web server. So this page is stored on Google's web server. Okay, and it acts as a web browser and it acts as a web page. And if I type something into here, like, I don't know, BBC, it will take me to the BBC's web server, which has a number of web pages on it. Okay, so we upload our web pages, or BBC do, they'll upload their web pages to their web server, which means it's available over the internet. So if somebody types in that website address, it will go to BBC's web server and it will display a web page. And I can click through the BBC's first web page, through their homepage, to different web pages, all stored on their web server. If I go to right click and view source on this particular website, I get a whole series of quite complex code. Not actually that complex, but you can see that this code is all written in HTML. So HTML is actually a standard code that's used, and it's what different web servers read in order to display some content, so some text. So in amongst all of this code is text, etc., that will be displayed. There's also lots of background colours, setting the width and the height of different things, setting the border, etc. And all this is written in HTML. Now, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. This is a text file language which obviously contains text that's going to be displayed. It also allows you to add links, add images, etc. But everything we write in text, and then it will display what we tell it to display in the text that we've written in the code. HTML, Hypertext Markup Language, uses tags to tell it what to display. And I'm going to show you how to create some very simple tags. And like I've said, we can add the location of pictures, audio, video, and hyperlinks. And as long as the videos and the audio files, etc., and the images are stored in the same place, in the same folder as the HTML code, then it will be able to access those different files as long as they're all stored in the same folder. Okay, So you must be thinking, well, how do we actually start writing in HTML? Well, we could use Adobe Dreamweaver, which is a bit of a nice user interface, and it does a lot of the code for us in the background. Or we can use Notepad. So we're all going to use Notepad today to try and create a very simple web page. So here's an example. This is an example. I've gone into Notepad, and to get to Notepad you go to the Start button at the bottom, and I've got Notepad there. You might have to type into the search for the programs Notepad at the bottom and then open up Notepad. And when you open up Notepad, it's an empty file basically with nothing in it. It's completely empty. Looks a bit like Microsoft Word, you might think, but there's no formatting really at the top and no ribbon. So it's just a very, very simple page. Okay, so let me show you this. In this particular Notepad file, we always have to tell Notepad that we're using, that we're going to start writing in HTML. And when we talk about tags, a tag is an arrow bracket with something written in it and then a closed arrow bracket. And if we're going to open up a tag, which I have here, I have to close the same tag as well. So if I just move this here at the bottom, I'm telling the web page at the top that I want to start to write in HTML. So I'm opening my tag, open arrow, HTML, close arrow. At the bottom, right at the very bottom of your web page, when you've finished everything, you would do the closing HTML tag. The only difference is we have this backslash there, and that means it's closing it. So for every opening tag, we have a closing tag. Even when we're telling Notepad that we want to start writing in HTML, we open it and say I'm writing in HTML, and now you say I'm closing the HTML. So a HTML file is made up of a head, it's got a title in there, and then it's made up of a body. So you can see here, I'm opening up my body, and really it's everything that's within the body section that will appear on your web page. The head is just to stipulate what you want to put in the head, which doesn't actually appear on the page. So here in the head section, I've opened up a title tag, and I've written a title for my page. It's called Amy's Blog. And then I've closed my title, so I've got a closing tag for title, and then I've closed my head. Now, if I was to run this page, which I will do, you can see the head that I've written, the title inside the head appears on the tab. So here, within my head section, I opened up a title tag and I wrote Amy's Blog and I closed my title. And that now appears here because that's where your title appears, in the tab at the top. Notice that where I've got my first heading is bigger font than the bold my second heading, and then I've got some normal standard body font in there, and that's because I'm using paragraph tag for that. But here for these two I'm using heading tags. Headings are a bit like the headings that you've done on your reports in Microsoft Word. You've got heading 1 in Word, then you had some heading 2s, which were smaller than the heading 1s. The same applies when we're writing HTML. We can actually go down to a heading 6. So if this is a H1, heading 1, and this is a heading 2, you can imagine what a heading 3, 4, 5 and 6 would look like. They'd get smaller and smaller and smaller. So if I go back to my page, I've opened up my body, and then I've opened up a heading tag, heading 1, which says my first heading, and then I've closed my heading tag. Then I've gone on to write a bit of text about me, and I've chosen to write this in a P tag. Now a P stands for paragraph, not going to the toilet, which some of you may have thought. So I open up my paragraph, my P tag, and I write whatever I want inside it. And then I close my P tag. And then I've decided I want another H. Now that is interesting because here it says H1, but it's not the same size. I'll change that to a H2. And I've written another heading. I might write something now about my hobbies. Let's say we're going to start writing something about ourselves. So in my H1 tag, I'm going to put a heading that says something like, about me. This is my blog. I might as well write a bit about me. And you can have a space in between your tags and your text. It doesn't really matter. It's entirely up to you. It's not as pedantic as Python. It's not as complicated as Python. Okay, so I've written, my name's Amy Nightingale. I'm a teacher at JSA. I have a lovely bunch of students that are going to do very well in computer science. I might hit a few returns, I might write something else. I have been here 1 year and aged 20! Exclamation marks. And we can keep going down and have our ending tag for our paragraph down here, or I can move my ending paragraph up here. Doesn't matter, but what does matter is that for every opening tag, you have a corresponding closing tag. I've gone on to write about my hobbies, so I'll have another paragraph text here. I've opened up my P, and I'm going to write something. I do enjoy walking, in brackets, I'm at that age. Oh dear, let's have a sad face. Okay, I also enjoy running and going to the gym. Very sad. Okay, and then I'm going to close my P. I could then go on to have another heading, and I can have another H1. I can have another H1. You can have as many heading ones as you want, just like you can in Word. What do I like? My daughter. Excuse me while I cough. Okay, so I'm going to have a closing tag for talking about my daughter. And I might write something. My Molly is 11 years old, going on 20. Okay, I'm going to close my P tag, and I can have a H6 now if I want. Go all the way down to have a H6 tag, and we can see how small. In fact, I might just write how small, just so I can see if this is a lot smaller. When I finish writing everything I want to write, I need to close my body because I opened it up here and I've said everything that appears in the body appears on the page. So I've now closed my body with that backslash, close my HTML, and we're ready to roll. So I have to save this file in a HTML folder that you need to create in your user area. I've called it index. You could call it home. You could call it home page. We don't have any spaces when we're saving. Save it. But to run it on the internet, to view it over the internet, it's not viewable because it's just a text file. It's just a notepad file that we've saved. It's this file here. Okay, now to turn it into a page, a web page, like this one here with the Internet Explorer symbol, we have to save it again. And this time when we go to Save As, we put a click at the end of the word, the end of the name that you've given it, but this time we put a dot HTML so it knows that it's a web page. So I say save. Yes, I do want to replace. I need to close it first. Go back and try and save it again. File save as, because I had it open over the internet. .html. Yep. Oh. You may find this, some computers are set up differently. I'm going to give it a different name. Because once I've saved it as a HTML file, it won't let me save over it. Saved it as index1.html. Let's see now, if I go to my index1.html file and double click on it, see if it loads. Here we go. Oh, look, how small. I've written how small. That's how small a heading 6 is. Tiny, tiny. That's interesting, because even though this sets to heading 1, it doesn't look as big. Maybe it is as big, but it just doesn't look it. Let me just go back to my code. H1, close H1. Got that. Oh, it's because I did set it to a H2. That's why. So you can see on here, on my page, I've got a H1, big font, paragraph text, small font, H2, which is slightly smaller than a H1, which is what we'd expect. And then another paragraph text, a H1 again, another paragraph text, and a H6. And everything that I've written within the body appears on my page. Okay. Now, I'm going to cheat because I've already got some code. You might be thinking, well, how do I write, how do I add an image to my web page? Okay. Well, to add an image to your web page, I'm just going to pinch, that's a hyperlink. I'm just going to pinch this image text down here that you can pause for and have a look. I'm going to add an image right at the bottom. This is the code that we use, a HTML code, to write an image. So we open up our tag. It's a bit odd. We normally have an opening tag and a closing tag, but for an image, we write it all within an opening tag. So I've got my opening arrow and I've got my closing arrow right over here. But I don't have to then do a closing tag later on. So the code is IMG, which stands for image, src, equals the name that you've saved the image as. If I go to my folder here, I've got an image, and it's a JPEG image, and I can see by the file extension here, JPG, and I've named it laser. And I know it's a JPEG because it tells me here. So I write the exact name of that image. I've called it laser and it's a JPEG. It's a JPG file. So you've got to put the file extension in. And we write that within quotes. Then I have alt, which means alternative text. So when I hover over the image on the internet, it gives me some text. And we use this for accessibility. So if you've got somebody who's short-sighted or who's got problems with seeing, they can use a screen reader. So somebody who's partially blind, for example, when they're on the internet, they can install a screen reader that actually reads out to them what content is on the page. And if you had an image on there and somebody was partially blind and they were using a screen reader, it would actually read out the word laser, because that's what I've written in the alternative text. Maybe I should be a bit more specific. Laser image, picture of laser images. Okay, that makes it a bit more understandable about what the image is. We close that quote and then we give it a style, because I can dictate the height and the width of that particular image. I can make it 500 pixels. Remember, px stands for pixels. Okay, so you might want to play around with the height and the width of your image. But you need to go on the internet, find an image, right-click and save picture as, save it into the same folder that you've stored this notepad file. Give it a name. Don't give it loads of words, just give it one word. Check what file extension it is, and then you can add this code and it will display the image, and then you can play around with the height and the width. Just to demonstrate, I'm going to stick this image in here in the same folder that my HTML file is in and my Notepad file. Called it laser. I'm going to save. I'm going to have to go to save as again. Give it a different name because it doesn't like it when it's already got a name. Go to that folder. Index2.html. Q. So now I've saved the file and then I've saved it as .html. And there we have the image. And like I said, if you hover over it, excuse me, it should give you the alternative text. Now that is interesting. It should do it. Maybe there's something wrong with using Internet Explorer as my web browser. I go back and check. I have got my alternative text in there. It should display it, but at least we know that the actual image has been displayed, which is really good. It's doing something because the cursor's moving around, but it's not displaying it. Okay, so let's add a hyperlink as well. So I might want to take them to some information that they might want to click on. So I'll go down here and I will add a hyperlink. So this hyperlink is taking you to a technology story which I got off the internet. So I went on to BBC and I read a story that I thought was quite interesting, and I copied the link from up here in the syntax at the top into the web link at the top. I just copied the whole of that link, and I then go to my HTML file and we have to write, again within our opening bracket, a href hyperlink reference, that stands for the name of the link, the actual website address of that link in quotes, and then after you've closed that tag, we then can write some meaningful information which will be displayed on your page with a hyperlink. It'll turn blue. So the person reading your page won't see this link. In fact, they don't see any of this. What they do see is what you write here, which is read more about this story, or read about this technology story, or click here to find out more. You can write whatever you want. And then we close the tag. So you can see how the code of the tags is slightly getting different, because for the image, you don't have this closing image tag, but here, when we're doing a hyperlink, we do. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, and save this page. Yep. And then I'm going to go, I'm going to save it as a different name. You might end up with lots of different versions. I'll call it index 3, and then I go back to save as to turn it into an actual web page, because I write .html on the end, and I save it. Then I go to my files, and here we have it, index 3, and now I've got that text that says read more about this story, and you can see that it's underlined. We can see that it's an active link, and if I click on it, it should then open up that particular link, which takes me to that BBC technology story. Okay, now you might decide that you want it a bit further down. You can put it in its own p tag, and then it should actually move it down here underneath the image. Okay, now if you've finished all of this code, then I can show you how to add bold. Well, I'll show you that now. If we want to turn some text into bold, I can use a B tag. This is how easy it is. I do an opening B after my P for paragraph, and at the end here, when I'm closing, I again need to close. So B stands for bold. I can also do italics, which is an I. So I do an opening I, and then I do my closing I. Okay, so that should put this text within this paragraph in bold and in italics. We can also do things like set the font size to Arial size 20. We can set the background colour to be green and the heading 1 styles to be red, size 50. You can do all of that in HTML code. But this is a whistle-stop tour of HTML. So remember, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It's a text file language that contains text, which we've written here, and that text is converted into images, which are pictures, audio, video, hyperlinks. We can do all of that. We can hyperlink to different locations. Web browsers, such as Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, Firefox, they're used to interpret the web files and display the data correctly. Without web browsers, without without Internet Explorer, without Google Chrome, without Firefox, we can't actually display these web pages. And you can see that because here in my file it's got Internet Explorer symbol against it, which means it will open up in Internet Explorer web browser. That's just because that's what my computer defaults to. Yours might default to Google Chrome or to Firefox. So web browsers are really important because we can't display the data and we can't interpret the data in the files, in these HTML files, as web pages without web browsers. Now obviously my web page displays on my computer because that's where my web page file is. You can't actually type in a website address to see this page, because to do that you'd have to pay for a website domain name, which might be www.joewhitelegs.com. Okay. Now, without paying for that domain name, and believe me, that will be for sale, we can't then, we need a location to upload these pages to. So you need to purchase a domain name from domain sites that sell all these domain names. And then you need to purchase a company that will allow you to upload your web pages. These files here would need to be uploaded onto a company's web server. So you can pay GoDaddy, which is a hosting company. You can pay them a certain amount of money on a monthly basis, about £20 a month or maybe even less, to give you some space on their web server so you can upload these files to their server with your domain name. So when people type in your domain name, www.joewhitelegs.com, it will then go to their server and open up your different HTML pages and allow people to view them. So bear that in mind. At the moment, you can see your pages because they're stored in your user area and you've got access to the internet. Still doesn't mean that they're actually proper web pages that everyone in the world can access yet. Okay, so I'm going to leave this page up. Remember that HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it's text that's used, it's text code that's used to display the text on the internet, and it uses tags in order to display the data, and we can also add pictures and audio, sound and video and hyperlinks and everything else Okay, have a go at creating your web page. Don't forget to save it. Give it a good name with no spaces, and then don't forget to save it again, but with .html on the end.